Okay, can I have everyone's attention, please? Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get going. We know a few people might straggle in just with the storm, that things are running, people are running a little bit late, but it's also getting close to 7:10. First, I want to thank Mason Greenfield. Where are you going? Out the door. Busy high schoolers, but Sam's son, if you're all not aware of that. But I'd like to welcome you all and thank you all so much for coming, especially on this really miserable night. But it feels very warm and lovely to be here with you all. We are really just excited that we are kicking off our Be Bold speaker series again. So we have had it going virtually. It is hybrid right now, so we have people tuning in on Facebook Live, and they can participate in the discussions, and we can answer questions for them, but we're just happy to have you here in person, so we thank you for coming. My name is Holly Bernini. I'm the Director of Development for the Good Now Library Foundation, and I think many of you already are somewhat aware of what we do, but I will keep it brief. Really what we do is we raise money so that we can keep this library the amazing learning place, gathering place, community hub that it already is. And we have very conveniently placed some flyers on your chairs. So we would encourage you to take a look at them. If there's anything you'd ever like to get involved with, you know where to find us. But we hope that you do take the time to read through this. It's quite a lot of important things that we do for the library that really help out to keep this place going. So a few housekeeping things for the evening. We do ask, I have taken off my mask as I'm standing over here, and I hope that's okay with you. If anybody is troubled by it, please do let me know. But we do ask that you all keep your masks on since you're in a little bit closer proximity. And the other thing is when we go to the question and answers, if you'd like to raise your hand, that would be great. That way we can just call on you, because we'll also be having people, Amy Sheldon here, who works with us too and does 1.5 million things. Amy is going to moderate the discussion, the questions coming in. So we'll kind of toggle between, I think, questions in the audience and questions coming in on Facebook Live. And now the reason we're here. So Sam Greenfield, who really I don't think needs much of an introduction with all of you, but for anybody who doesn't know Sam already, Sam used to be the Director of Development, my role, which means I had to fill really big shoes when I came in. It was a little intimidating. But Sam is now the Director of Giving at the Dana Hall School in Wellesley. And Sam also has her column that she writes in the Town Crier on the sunny side. Sam also, she shares tips and inspiration on social media and on her website. And you can find her at Greenfield.com. So thank you for coming, Sammy. We're so excited.
Thank you. All right, I tend to be loud, but let me know if you can't hear me in the back. I usually don't need a mic. When the library asked me to come tonight, I was very flattered because when I worked at the library, a couple of us started this Be Bold series 4 years ago, so it's really crazy to be on the other side of it. And today, many of us are heartbroken over the loss of a really good friend, Dylan Remley, here in town, and it's serendipitous that we're here tonight because I became friends with him here at the library. Melissa and I worked here, and Todd and Dylan were our first Good Now Library Foundation volunteers. So I think that an effort of, not that I like to use grief, but I do think a lot of times it's a good opportunity to take that time. He would want us to find the joy in every day and realize that life is really short, and that is why a lot of people after going to funerals and things, they kind of are more inspired. It's sad, but it's also a good opportunity to kind of realize how important it is to find the daily joy. So that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Talking about finding your passion, finding your joy, and kind of making your day a little bit brighter every step. So 4 years ago, I was working here, and my own elevator speech was kind of boring to me. And when people asked me what was going on or what was new, I just kind of felt like I was telling the same old story of what I was doing with my kids and what my husband was doing and where we lived. And it wasn't that exciting to my own ears. And I went away with some girlfriends, and when we were there, I was trying to think what I really like to do. And what I like to do is connect with people. And I like to share if I've seen something good, or I've read something good, or I've eaten something good, I want to tell people about it. So I just started writing a blog just so that I could be connecting with people on something very different than, you know, what my kids are doing. And so I started writing that blog 4 years ago, next month, just as a way to kind of connect with people. And it was fun and something that I did as a hobby. 2 years ago, I left the foundation here to go work at the Dana Hall School to learn more about fundraising. And unfortunately, I did not predict that I would start a new job and the pandemic would hit. So that kind of kicked off probably 6 weeks into my new job. You know, the world shuts down. So again, I find myself like, wow, okay, my conversations are now super boring. I am talking about COVID and the pandemic and all of our anxiety, and that was just, you know, getting pretty depressing. So I said to 2 of my friends, could we try this where we text each other every day, just one thing a day that makes us smile and brings joy? And I was like, I'd like to call that a joy burst. And I was like, I just need somebody to hold me accountable every day to think of something good. And so that was what we did to each other for 2 or 3 months, is just every day we would text each other one thing that would brighten our day. And in doing that, I realized how helpful that was. Not because if I was having a miserable day, at 6 o'clock I'd be like, oh my God, I gotta text them. What can I possibly text them about? I would literally be looking around the house, like, okay, something's gotta make me happy. I'll go take a bath, or I'll read a book, or I'll watch a TV show. So I found that the more I was having to look for joy, the more I was finding joy. And then what was also very helpful is my friends would send me what was brightening their day, and they would say, you know, I went and bought Lifesavers, and it was so much fun to eat a Lifesaver. Or I went and, you know, treated myself to a milkshake at McDonald's, you know, and then I would realize, like, oh, okay, I can do these things too. So we kind of helped each other. So that was just an easy way to get started. And when I realized that sharing that with other people kind of could inspire other people, that became a lot of fun. So tonight, I'm going to give you eight steps, because I think 8 is enough for everybody here, and things that you can do on a daily basis to find out what's making you happy. And then if you go back and reflect on those things, you can start to see what you enjoy. Because I believe if you look to see what is making you happy, you can look to see where you might want to find work. So I have some prompts here. When you see this little vignette, what do you guys think of? I mean, I look at this, and these are things that make me happy. I love fresh flowers. I love a candle. These are like some of my favorite books. So what I like to do is keep these things throughout my house. I actually keep books in all different spots as kind of a way to, I call it flipping my pancake. If I'm in a bad mood, I can pick up a book and read a page. I'm not talking like sit down and read for 2 hours. I mean, a lot of these books are great to just read a little blurb of. I'm a big fan, and I post a lot about buying yourself flowers, lighting yourself a candle, going to buy a coffee. I'm not suggesting that you go and plan a European vacation tomorrow. I'm just saying there are little things that you can do each day to bring you kind of a little burst of joy. So, what else do I need to tell you? So step 1, here are the 8 steps that I'm going to share with you. And step 1, the first thing that I did during the pandemic that kind of really jump-started my mindset was to get curious. And I started reading different books. This pile here, which you can check out, has a lot of different inspirational books. And you really just need a book that kind of you can resonate with. The Artist's Way is a great book that gives you prompts and gets you thinking. And I wanted to start writing in a journal, but I bought a journal and didn't really know what exactly I was going to start writing in. The Artist's Way gives you daily writing prompts. The idea is that you write every day for 6 months, and it kind of tells you what to write. So that was the first thing I did. And I started asking people. I started looking on social media and starting to see what people were sharing that they liked. And I started, really kind of looking to say, okay, this, anybody that I like to follow, what are they reading? What are they listening to? And I got inspiration. And I started asking people all the time what they were reading and enjoying. Our book club we were reading the book Wild Game by Adrienne Broder, and I sent her an Instagram message and asked if she'd come to our book club and Zoom, and she did, and we were all surprised and excited. And after she spoke, I sent her a message the next day and just said, how do you do it all? How do you do all these wonderful things that you're suggesting? And she said, I just get up earlier. And I was like, I was waiting for this like massive epiphany. And she was like, I get up earlier. I started getting up 5 minutes earlier, then I got up 10 minutes earlier. And so I took that advice and started getting up 5 minutes earlier. And the surprising thing when you get up 5 minutes earlier and you enjoy it is that like a week later you get up 10 minutes earlier. And now I get up a half hour earlier. But then that was great advice. So I started to kind of ask people. So getting curious was helpful. And the great thing about that is once I started getting up earlier and writing in a journal every morning, I then 6 months later had a journal of stories that I was writing, and I realized that I tend to write stories of my own childhood or memories. And one story, or I also write about what makes me feel good, and one story I wrote about our neighborhood, and I sent it to the newspaper here in Sudbury and said, I don't know if this is interesting to you. And they published it, and then I sent them another message and said, let me know if you ever need any others, because I have a journal full of them. And they were like, how about a column? So I had to ask, but I was like, I have nothing to lose. I have a job, and this is not what I'm trying to do. And so by asking and getting curious, that helped. My next tip is to share with what you're doing. Now, when I did the Joy Burst, and I told my 2 girlfriends about it, that was a little scary, because I was like, they could have just laughed at me and were like, what are you suggesting? Then I posted about doing it, and that's much scarier. And then one day I just posted that my husband was rescuing an owl, and that was bringing me a joy burst. I thought most people would laugh and find that silly and not be very interested. And the funny thing was, the story of Olivia became something that everybody, glommed onto. So I had to have the courage the first time to share it, but then the more I shared it, the more people got really on board with it. And then, it was great. It was a lot of fun, and it kind of became this Joy Burst movement. And I wanted to go, I like social media, I like Instagram, but I was getting very tired of Facebook at the time. Felt like it was a lot of COVID, a lot of politics, which I'm not that into. And so I created a Joy Burst Facebook page so that I could have a diversion from all of that. So my point about social media is you can make it fun. A lot of people I'll hear complaining that they don't like to follow this person, or they don't like what's this. Just unfollow them, and you can make your own feed. But it is a good learning tool, and you can, learn a lot from other people. All right, so another thing that I like to do is look ahead to kind of find something every day or every week. Or even every month that you can look forward to. And that can be, when I wake up, I try and think of okay, and a lot of times, by the way, when I wake up, I'm like, oh God, get me, I can't wait till I can get back in my pajamas and watch Succession. I'm not saying it's like, but it's just good to give yourself something to look forward to, whether it's, Friday night I'm gonna do X, or you're planning a trip, that's fantastic. But little buoys along the way to kind of keep you going are helpful. What else? So when I did the Joy Burst challenge, what I found fun was I was doing it on a text string with my girlfriends. Then I could look back, we had saved them all, so you could look back and say, after like a month, so we started it November 1st, by Thanksgiving you could look back and see that, over the course of the month, our joys kind of picked up speed, and we found more and more fun things to be happy about. And then you could look at, in the middle of December and say, oh, wow, this is actually interesting. Like, I could sit there and realize half of my joy bursts have to do with reading a book or, connecting with friends. You could really kind of figure out what you liked. Now, you don't have to text somebody. You could write them down. A lot of people like to have a notebook and just every day write one thing they're either happy about or grateful for. But it does give you good insight into your own happiness, because you can look back, a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, and say it's how a lot of people kind of figure out what they want to do down the line. Like, I realized I like to connect with people. I realized that's so much fun for me. I like to post things that make me happy, because then I like that people are interjecting and they're sharing what makes them happy, and then they tell me something that I didn't know and I learn. I love all that interaction. Not everybody likes that, but people can kind of figure out what they enjoy. my job before Good Now, I worked at BC and I was in fundraising. But before that, I always was in HR. But I met a woman when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I was planning a golf tournament for my late father. And the woman said to me, we had coffee, and she was like, I have a job at BC. Have you ever considered fundraising? I'm like, I don't think I want to ask people for money. And she was like, so in your free time, you plan a golf tournament and you ask people for money. You clearly like, fundraising and giving. And that's how she took a chance on me, because she was like, if that's what you like to do in your free time, you must not be afraid to do it. So if you kind of look to see what you enjoy on a daily basis, you can kind of gauge where you might go. Another thing that I like to do is I create a Pump It Up playlist, which Sue Uller gave me the book, Chasing the Bright Side. And in that book, Jess talks about creating a playlist if you were going to walk on stage. Like if you're Beyonce and you're walking on stage, what's a song that you want to play? So the funny thing is, as I was listening to music, I kept kind of liking songs and created a playlist. And I mean, half of it is cheesy, and I love it, and it makes me feel great every time I play it. But the funny thing is, a couple people recently have asked me to, like, oh, can I hear your playlist? And it does give you great insight into your friends when you ask to share their playlist. So not only is it fun for yourself, it's also a fun kind of, conversation tool. So by creating your own playlist, it can kind of, and if I get home from work and I'm about to cook dinner and not really happy about what I'm about to do, it does help me to kind of put on a different playlist and put on music. Another thing that is very helpful, I find, to do is find something that will brighten yourself, whether that be, getting your nails done or buying the shoes that you want, but somehow keeping yourself excited and polished can also help. Like I know when I was Zooming a lot, I had to put on earrings, and it was crazy. I could be in like yoga pants, but I had to put earrings on just so that when I saw myself in the Zoom, because I Zoomed for a good year, I just did that to kind of jazz up what I was looking at. So sometimes you got to kind of decorate yourself. My last tip is taking the risk. And that is probably, obviously the word risk scares a lot of people. But when I took the job here at Good Now Library Foundation, Barbara Pryor, who was starting the foundation, said, we need someone 6 hours a week. And I was like, that's not going to work for me. But all right, I'll do this for a couple weeks and see kind of, while I'm looking for a job. By the way, I stayed 7 years because it turned into a job. And then Kristen and Melissa joined me, and I was in a book club with them, and I mentioned that they both, there were jobs that we were creating. And then Amy Sheldon came to us and said, I'd love to do marketing, and she actually ended up volunteering for a year before we could pay her. Holly came and said, I'm trying to decide what I want to do. I might want to go back into fundraising, and she joined the board and now has my old job. So everybody kind of had to take a different, it wasn't exactly let me walk in and start this job and this is exactly how it looks. Everybody kind of had to do something a little different and figure it out. But by trying it, they could then decide, either it would work, which it did, or if it didn't, they kind of had nothing to lose. So that's kind of the most important. But so during the pandemic, one of the things I did was we had a garden for like 3 or 4 years that was over by our shed, and it grew, as Todd refers to, the very expensive cucumber. It grew 1 cucumber for like 4 years. So during the pandemic, I convinced Mason to move it with me, and we moved to the sun. And the garden has been a great metaphor because I'm awful. I'm not a good gardener. And every year it grows something that I have no idea. Like it grows a lot of herbs, and then a surprise. Like last year, all of a sudden I had 14 pumpkins, and I never planted pumpkins, but I compost, so I must have thrown out a pumpkin at some point. And then this year, when I got all excited to run to my garden, there were no pumpkins. None. I mean, I had 14 last year, and this year it's all tomatoes. But it's been a great metaphor because I can't control it. I have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, I guess I could control it if I was a good gardener. But it definitely is just I just kind of have to roll with whatever is happening. So I'm going to email this to you guys tomorrow, but these are the tips that I think on making your garden grow. Design your landscape. Get curious about what other people are doing. Plant the seeds by observing what you enjoy and what you like and what makes other people smile. Watch it grow. journal, create a mood board, share with others, practice patience. You never know. I mean, I literally started a blog 4 years ago. I've been writing this column for a year. I could have never predicted any of the way this is working. Continue to weed, water, and relocate, and soak up the sunshine, and then take risks. You don't know the elements, but you got to keep nurturing them. So I do think if you try to do the above things for 6 months, at the end, you'll have a pretty good snapshot into what you like and actually what you don't like. And hopefully that will help you as you go forward. So that's my spiel. Do you guys have any questions?
Do you want to just answer?
Oh yeah, I can answer. I think I can answer. If anyone has any questions. Oh, the world is your oyster.
I'll piggyback onto something that you said. I remember reading a couple years ago an author that I was following, and he made me laugh because I feel like years ago it started, everybody, find your passion, find your passion. And he's like, why is everybody talking about finding your passion? If you have a passion, you're already probably doing it. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, that if you look around and you find the things that you like, then you're probably already doing them. You just have to pay attention. So
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, when we were writing about the owl, everything I see is like, if you're going to write a column, write about what's happening in your life. I'm like, well, that's not really exciting. And when I started writing about the owl, I was laughing because I'm like, yeah, this is what everybody is glomming onto, like this story about an owl. That's just normal Todd Greenfield.
Maybe Boston is.
Yes, you're right. Any questions? Kara.
Not so much a question, but I did just want to say with your Joyverse that's on Facebook,
Yep.
I absolutely love it. And one of the things that it's helped me with is that, remember when I first joined it, and I would read what people wrote, and then like every day it would start happening earlier and earlier and earlier that I would find like my Joyverse. But then like an hour later there would be another. And like as soon as I started just paying attention to what made me happy, they happen all day long. And it just kind of like grew that way. And I've invited people to that page and they thank me all the time.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome. I just want to be happy.
That's awesome. I do take a lot of pictures because it does make me stop to focus on whatever I'm getting excited about. Like if anyone follows me, when I go out on a run, I take so many pictures that if you actually pay attention, I'm not really running as much as I'm walking, but I just like to take pictures because it makes me stop and say, okay, let me look at what's around. No other questions? Oh, yes.
So a lot of people who talk about the subject of making yourself happy and enjoying what's there for you use the word gratitude. And how do you relate gratitude to what you were talking about? Things that make you happy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what you also appreciate. I think you can, I think when you see what makes you happy, it's also what you appreciate. I think you're kind of noticing, which is kind of the same thing. It's all, because my sister had given me a gratitude journal that I had started a couple years ago. But I felt like I was more apt to find things that I appreciated about the day than as far as being grateful. But it's all connected. The more you share the more you find your gratitude, you'll also find, kind of what's making you happy.
Do you want to tell us about the books? I'd be very curious what's in your pile.
Well, these books are fantastic. Well, Hoda has 2 books. This is her older one, and I keep them on my nightstand because either before I go to bed, sometimes right when I wake up. It really honestly depends on how I'm feeling. What I like about hers is they're by date, and it's just one little quote. Bird by Bird, Anne Lamott. This is actually, they just talked about this in Ted Lasso. This is a great book about, for all ages, because it's about just kind of tackling a project piece by piece. My favorite author is Kelly Corrigan, and if you guys have not read or listened to her podcast, she's phenomenal. And Tell Me More, again, is also great. What I like about all these books is they're very quick snippets. So, you could read, when I sit down to read, I would love to read for a long time, but the reality is I might keep one in the kitchen and while I'm drinking coffee in the morning, read 2 pages. Or I might read, one thing of Hoda before I go to sleep, like a page. So I'm not reading at great length, but this is a great book that is also on great little illustrations. If you need some real inspiration, you're a badass, and she has a great calendar that will also. This book, Todd and I keep giving to lots of people because it's a great, Brad Montague talks about being better grown-ups, and he refers a lot to Mr. Rogers in this book. But he talks about really how to remember how you were as a child, and that's probably how you want to be treated and how you can treat other people, the little kid in you. Chasing the Bright Side, Sue gave me this, and this is great because she talks about her story of starting Headbands of Hope and then The Artist's Way. So yeah. But, I always thought it was crazy. My mom kept books all over the place growing up. She'd have one in her purse, one in her LOB tote bag, one in the car. I'm like, how do you finish any books? They're all over the place. But I have them in different sporadic spots based on, kind of what I'm doing. I do read a novel at night. I try, but I last like maybe 10 minutes before I fall asleep. So to have books kind of scattered around, like coffee table or an end table, that I can just read quickly if I sit down with a glass of wine or I sit down with a cup of coffee just for like a second. Again, it really does flip my mindset. Hoda's great because they're quick. But yeah. Yes.
You mentioned Ted Lasso. I was going to ask you, do you get as much, we love that show because it's about kindness and all that. Do you get as much joy out of shows like that and watching TV and watching content as you do reading books?
I do, because I feel like, I love to watch shows because I'm usually hopefully watching them with someone. I guess not always, but sometimes I'm watching them with someone else, like a family member. So I like that because then we can go back and forth. Todd, the kids. So that part I really enjoy.
Yeah.
But I also like, I have always connected with people about books or shows, and my family's like that. Like if in all different ages, I feel like if I can't find a book to connect with them about, I can find a TV show. It's kind of been all. So yes, Ted Lasso, I get huge amounts of joy from Ted Lasso. Yeah, it's a good show. Any other questions? Yes.
I want to hear about your playlist. Do you
Oh.
have 5 songs or one big song, or do you have different?
Todd, can you cue up a song? Let's see. There's a song. Huh? Huh? Is that on my playlist? That's on my playlist. Yeah, I'm like, okay, that sounds like it's on my playlist. Yeah. The funny thing about my playlist, obviously it's my personal playlist. A lot of people are like, oh, please don't, what is on your playlist? But yeah, some oldies, it's a mixture. And a lot of people are doing that now. Like if you go into Spotify, Glennon Doyle will share a Brene Brown will share her playlist. I feel like I've seen a couple people recently share playlists. But it is fun. Chrissy is good about it. She'll send me a playlist. It does give you, all of a sudden when someone shares their playlist, you have a whole different, image of them, which is kind of fun. And something to talk about. Yes.
What's in the blue cup?
Oh, well, the blue cup, there's nothing at the moment. But the blue cup, which you gave me, that brings me joy. Brings me lots of joy. My Nantucket cup, my camera, so good. All right. So, I do think that if you try, and even if you just for a day or a week, try and record what makes you happy, I think you'll, to Kara's point, the more you're looking for it, the more you'll find it. That's my playlist. That's the best song on my playlist. Yeah. If you guys don't have any more questions, just thank you very much. Thank you for coming out on a rainy night. Thank you. I appreciate it.